Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. It's one of those days where I've run into some computer issues, and that's always fun for anybody. It's like you have an older computer, and I've told Russ this a bunch of times. I have an older computer that, like, I had all my tax information, all my, like banking stuff, some of my documents, my iTunes, and all of a sudden this 10-year-old laptop this morning just like would not go into, like, it wouldn't start up regularly. I had to go into safe mode and do my taxes and start transferring my music because I don't know if this thing is going to crash, and I'm just trying to get everything off of it before it does crash. I hate that, but I've heard that story and it's happened to me a bunch of times, so it's one of those days.
The only pro tip I can give is the same as you have a Chromebook, I buy the Windows book. So I have one upstairs that was getting a little fluky. So at the end of every tax year, I always put my stuff on the cloud and on a backup file, on a thumb drive. And then, what I did was I just transferred it onto the new one. And now that one is just a brick just sitting up there. But in case I ever need it, I probably could turn it on again. And that's what you do. And no big deal.
I knew I'd get sympathy from the chat. Funky Cold Zadina says, is it a Commodore 64, Mike? No, it's not. It's actually a Dell laptop, but it's about 10 years old, and it was working fine. And all I was using it for was banking and iTunes, but even that's too much. Somebody just said 10 years old. I'm like, well, it was working. So what do you want me to do?
Right. Every 3 or 4 now, I'm just rotating out these $179 books, and it works well. But I still have a big desktop at home. But anyhow,
it's not a TN 286. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bigfoot.
Oh God.
Because it has now come to the point where the History Channel is now a shell of itself. It actually used to have real history. Like, remember when they had like the Men That Made America? That was really good.
Yeah, no, my father used to call it the Hitler Channel because every show was about Hitler.
Right. Now they've gotten to the point where they've got this show on Bigfoot, and it's not like Finding Bigfoot. They tried to be more serious, so they have actual scientists. They're arguing over the 1967 film that we all saw when we were kids,
Mysterious Monsters,
which is it was in that, but yes. And the guy who made the film was basically a guy who put up his own money for a Bigfoot movie, and it never went anywhere. So obviously this is what he did, and he fudged this. And they're looking at it, and one of the experts actually thinks it's real. The rest don't, right? But they're still talking about Bigfoot like it's real, right? And in one of the parts that they did, they made a huge mistake on the show. So they're now talking about, well, let's get bloodhounds to find Bigfoot. They find everything else. They're great in tracking this and great in tracking that. Except they have to follow the scent of that animal to be able to find it. Where do they have that, Mike? Where is the scent of Bigfoot?
The only way to find the scent is to capture one, and then they can, yeah. So unless you have some Bigfoot artifacts,
it can't be done.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're a kid, you get into this stuff. And like, the Bigfoot and the Yeti and the abominable snowman, they're all connected. Basically, it was a Bigfoot. There's be like a Bigfoot in the Andes or whatever mountain.
You wrote a book, this guy, about the abominable snowman. He was the opposite of me. At least I write about real things that actually happened, and he wrote about garbage.
Yeah, and my favorite is the Loch Ness Monster, which they haven't found in 45 years. So it's like, I'm sorry. I mean, I love it, and I loved the Rod Serling the movie Mysterious Monsters back in the day. But I'm sorry, with technology, with satellites that can see people from outer space, if there was a Bigfoot, you'd think they would have found it by now.
Same thing with aliens. Like, let's be real about aliens for a moment, and ghosts. None of it exists. None of it. Funky Cold Zadina will have an opposite opinion, but I'm telling you, none of it exists.
But Hollywood is gonna perpetuate this because they make billions of dollars.
I know. So I also want to say happy trails to Eli Manning. Everybody has picked today, the day that he's retiring, and the Mets even picked today to have their press conference for Luis Rojas, which is just stupid. why would you do it on the same day Eli Manning's having his?
They talked about this last night. They think that the Mets wanted to do it because they wanted to sort of, bury it, because it's embarrassing that they've had to name 2 managers in the span of a month.
But you can't bury it in New York. They're still going to send people. They're just not going to – they're going to send like the movie reviewer to the Mets press conference now. That's what's going to happen. And the other guy – because everybody's short-staffed, and the other guy is going to go to the Eli one. But anyhow –
So Brody's going to say, Gene Siskel, there's your
– well, if he's still alive.
He's not.
Somebody like that. But basically –
Gene Shalit.
I think what we'll miss from Eli is the Eli face. We all enjoyed that. We all enjoyed the memes from that. But a lot of people have picked today to sort of say whether they feel like he is a Hall of Famer or not. I mean, I'll tell you I think he is, but it doesn't matter. Why are you doing it today? Like, leave the guy alone. He's actually going out the right way on his own terms. He's not playing for another organization, although technically he was a Charger for a hot minute, just never wore the jersey. But he never played for another organization. Like Joe Namath was a Ram, and that was awful. He's at least doing it the right way. And there's still writers out there that feel like they have to say, well, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, and this is why. It's like, who cares today? We don't even care what you think.
Well, it's funny because we talked about that on the radio yesterday, because the story, it's been clear for a couple days that he's going to retire, that it started to leak out. And we looked it up, and his record was 117 and 117. So, but he won 2 Super Bowls. And actually, Tom Brady tweeted out on Twitter, says, "Congratulations, Eli, on a great career. I still wish you wouldn't have won those 2 Super Bowls."
Right. And that's the exact reason why he's a Hall of Famer, because the same people that want to argue why Joe Namath isn't, because you look at stats, it's not about the stats for this. It's about Eli beating Brady twice. That's what it's about.
Right. And my answer to it was, should he be a Hall of Famer? It's questionable. Will he be a Hall of Famer? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's New York. He won 2 Super Bowls. He beat Brady twice. It would be I think it would be an issue going forward. I mean, he may not get in on the first ballot, but most of the quarterbacks that are playing, that are nearing the end of their careers right now, are going to be Hall of Famers. Maybe even Phillip Rivers, although he didn't win a Super Bowl. Roethlisberger, Breeze.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Stafford could have thrown more yards. Does that make him a Hall of Famer? No.
Yeah, no. But most of the quarterbacks of this era that have been around, all of them have won Super Bowls except for Rivers, and all of them are going to get in the Hall of Fame. So,
I mean, here's an example. Like a guy like Donovan McNabb, who threw up in the Super Bowl. But anyhow, a guy like Donovan McNabb kills Eli in stats. But Eli's 2 Super Bowls up on him. I'm voting for Eli first. I am.
Yeah, and so is Terrell Owens.
Yes, T.O.2, no doubt.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Now, we're fully into the All-Star break. Nothing is going on. They're holding interviews at basically some sort of media village in St. Louis. We're going to have the events tomorrow, the on ice events, the skating, the shooting, the accuracy, all those things.
I mean, I'm going to watch to see if McDavid go the fastest.
I'll watch that. I'm not watching the game. I'm just telling you right now.
Now, which game? Is this 3-on-3 tomorrow, or is that?
No, 3-on-3 is Sunday.
So they're having the men's and the women's on Sunday. Okay.
I believe so. I think it's just the events.
Okay. So, I mean, I'll watch the fastest skater. There's no question about
it. I actually think that's entertaining. I actually think it's sort of informative. But the game, I don't really get much out of the game. So unless there's like interviews of guys like Elliot Friedman who are well informed, or Chris Johnston, or TSN's guys, LeBrun or Mackenzie or Drager, there's nothing really that I can learn from watching a game of shinny. It's for the kids. It's for the advertisers. God bless. I'll check in on Monday when the
See, that's better, Mike. Now you're getting it.
No. I mean, I have made my disdain clear. I don't think anybody can think I'm wishy-washy on it. I think it's worthless, but it's not going away.
Now you're going down a bad path. You were on the hard. You were on the high road, and now it's spiraling
I
down.
just don't see any point in it, but other people do. So I'll agree to disagree and let it go at that. So Monday, when the NHL comes back, that's when I'll check back.
So let it go.
There you go. But today is 1 month away from what is meaningful, which is the NHL trade deadline. And since there's not a lot of news, we'll take some questions in the chat. We'll talk. I know that Pierre LeBrun had a piece in the Athletic touching on all 31 teams and looking at what their needs, what their buyers, whether they're sellers, where they will go. We'll start with the West because we always start with the East and then we sort of give the West, sort of a short shrift. But let's start with the Pacific Division. And here's where I think teams that are in the playoff race, there's a lot of pressure on 5 teams because they're all within a point of each other. They all have a chance to make the playoffs. And I think that there's a lot of motivation amongst those 5 general managers. A couple of them, or at least one of them, has made a coaching change. Vegas,
right?
And Russ, we'll start with Vegas because we'll start with the Pacific Division. We had a reporter from the Vegas Sun on yesterday, and he essentially said they could use some backup goaltending, but the big focus for Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee before the deadline is a defenseman. They're loaded at forward. Now, I asked the reporter.
Remember who the reporter was?
He was. I
know one of them.
Justin. I think his first name was Justin. I can't.
Oh, okay. I know who that is. I know the other guy a little bit better. Okay.
Yeah. But I asked whether there would be any motivation on the Golden Knights to trade an Alex Tuck or a Cody Glass to get a defense. Now, obviously, rental defenseman because those are valuable young assets. But whether their need for defense was so great that they would be willing to trade one of those guys in a deal to get a defenseman, like say a Matt Dumba or somebody with term on his contract. And he says he doesn't think that that McCrimmon will trade Glass, will trade Tuck, but they are going to be in the market for a defenseman. And the question I have then is they have no cap room, so how are they going to create the cap space to get that defenseman?
Right. I mean, when you look at Vegas, they still have to act like an expansion team. Fleury sort of keeps them in a different direction that the normal expansion team would be.
Right.
But their minor leagues are not loaded. And so they can't afford to trade Cody Glass, who will be their top line center, worst case, second line center. Mm-hmm. They can't trade Nicholas Hague, who they desperately need on defense, which is already weak, right? Because he'll be there for the next 10 years. So those kinds of guys, they can't trade. So they're going to have to trade somebody on the roster and maybe give a draft pick as well. So if it's Cody Eakin, hey, if you take the salary of Cody Eakin, he's a pretty good player, and we'll make it a little sweeter to get player X. They're going to have to do something like that.
And they have extra draft picks from all those trades.
Right.
Now, this is the thing that I think is interesting with them, and obviously we won't know about this until probably after the deadline and into the summer. If you're looking for a team that is a perfect match for a goaltender like Georgiev, who's cheap now, who'll probably be relatively cheap, even after he signs his new deal, I mean, by cheap, I mean less than $3 million, probably in that range. It's Vegas with Fleury at 34 to 35 years old and, breaking down a little bit. I think that Vegas's big focus in the summer is going to find, if it's not the heir apparent, then a goaltender who can play 30 to 35 games. And Georgiev can do that. That makes a lot of sense for Vegas, and maybe
in the summer. I don't think they'll make that trade now.
No. I honestly, I don't think. And this is touching on the Rangers here. We'll get back to the Pacific in a second. I don't think that the package that Jeff Gordon is looking for Georgiev, which he should be looking for, which is a high draft pick or a NHL forward, that he's going to get that before the deadline.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It may have to be a summer trade. No question. The other thing is, so here's an example of a trade, and I think the salaries are close. Let's say you went Cody Eakin for Robert Hagg. That's something where that helps both teams. If Gostisbehere comes back healthy, then the Flyers do get a bottom 6 guy they could use. And
Eakin's 3.85, and Hag I think is in the 2 million range. So
so they could eat a little Vegas, and the Flyers could throw in a pick.
Yeah, Hag is 1.15. He's really cheap. So
okay, but if they eat theirs and the Flyers throw in a draft pick, like a trade like that's possible.
Sure. Or another guy gets included in the deal, like a Scott Lawton or something of that nature. I mean, so that's a possibility. Arizona, who's tied for the wild card with Vegas at 57 points. I would think after the Hall deal that the most that they'll do is if there's a question about the health of their two goaltenders, maybe they try to get some insurance that they don't think Aiden Hill is a good number 3 behind Kemper and Ranta. I think where they have to go is bottom pairing defense, because I like the top 4: Goligoski, Demers, Ekman Larson, Chikrin. 5 and 6 are not very impressive. They've been able to survive and they play a defensive game, but I think they could use a little bit of an improvement there, and that would be pretty easy before the deadline.
I mean, they have to get Kempner back. He was having an exceptional year. If he comes back and stays healthy, they're fine. I don't even think Ranta could get him to the Stanley Cup, even with the team they have.
No.
I think it was the way Kempner was playing. So he really has to be healthy. They have to be certain of that. So I don't know if trading for another goalie really matters, because I think it's sort of like the backup quarterback thing for them. If they don't have that guy, they'll just go as far as they can go, and that'll be it, and it won't be as far as they could have been.
Well, Esmir asks, if Vegas somehow gets Georgiev, does that mean that Malcolm Subban is expendable and who will want him? Well, okay. The reason that they would be wanting to get Georgiev is because Subban doesn't meet the criteria of what they think is a dependable backup. But I think any move that they're going to make is going to be in the offseason, because again, I don't see where the fit is. Say and I'm not making up a rumor here. I'm just saying I'm putting the two teams together because it's a fit in terms of, I think Georgiev would be a good future option for Vegas. I don't think that Vegas is going to give up anybody like what the Rangers will want during the season. They might be able to do that during the offseason. I mean, if it's a bigger deal and a guy like Alex Tuck is available, is somebody they're willing to trade, and maybe the Rangers would be interested in that. But
maybe Kemper is healthy now. He's off the IR.
Right.
So that's a big thing for them. I think with Subban, look, even a team like the Leafs could be interested in him at the draft. They could.
Sure. I believe Toronto is going to go KHL for their.
They will, but that still doesn't mean they won't get somebody else too to sort of hedge the bet, because you never know.
And Subban could probably clear waivers because he's cleared waivers before, and they actually have had they had his younger. I think it's his younger brother, Jordan. He played a year for the Marlies, so and they're Toronto kids, so they always like Toronto kids.
Right. As an example, because if they get the KHL guy and he's got an out in his deal and it's not working out, he might not even play for them that year.
Or if he doesn't work out, he goes down to the Marlies, and then they're going to have to get themselves a fallback, because they were stuck this year by not having a fallback to Hutchinson.
Right.
Calgary is at 57 points as well. They're the only team, I believe, in either. I'm just checking. Yep, they're the only team in a playoff spot right now that's a negative goal differential. They're minus 12.
They could straighten it out. I think, look, the loss of Valimaki is almost forgotten, but it's massive for them. That was a big loss.
Now the question,
I was going to finish, Mike, but no, I'm just saying it was massive because they also had to sign Stone last minute, right? And that's a hell of a drop off from Valimaki to Stone, right? So that's where it really weakened their defense.
Well, now they have the benefit of opening up $4.3 million in cap space by trading for a leak to Buffalo. So they have the cap space to not have to trade somebody off their existing roster to add. And I would think that they're probably going to add a forward.
Yep.
I think they're okay on defense. They have a couple unrestricted free agents. They're very similar to Toronto in that respect. They have Hamonic and they have Brody as UFAs.
The only difference is I think they're going to win the Pacific. I do.
Right.
With the trade that they make and the existing talent that they have, All they have to do is come together a bit, and they could win that division.
They could be in on Toffoli. They could be in on
Toffoli makes sense for them.
Yeah. Now Edmonton is also at 57 points. They're a impressive +2 goal differential.
Going the way you said that.
It seems to me that the focus for Ken Holland is going to be finding wingers to his centers, a little more skill on the boards, so he can.
And what's he giving up for that?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Darren Drager reported last week that Edmonton's interested in a top 6 forward, and they're interested in Kapanen, Janssen, or Kerfoot from the Leafs.
Baloney.
And I'm like, okay, well, if Darnell Nurse is available, then we have a deal. I mean, now I think it's going to take, and again, I think this is a summer deal, and remember that this happens and this is just, again, I haven't been told this by anybody, but I'm putting the 2 and 2 together. You've got Edmonton with young defensemen coming. Bouchard, Broberg. Broberg may be a couple years away. Bouchard will probably be on their blue line next year. Darnell Nurse is making $3.2 million. He's an arbitration eligible restricted free agent, and he's 2 years away from being a UFA. They've been negotiating with him, but they can't get him on a long-term deal. And if he goes to arbitration, it's probably going to be this is a Jacob Trouba situation all over again. He's walking his way to unrestricted free agency. That's what's going on. I know for a fact that the Leafs, based on Dubas and Keefe's history, they like players that they know, and they don't know Darnell Nurse from Sault Ste. Marie. He's a lefty. They're looking more for righties, but if they lose Jake Muzzin in free agency, if he leaves, then they need a Darnell Nurse type, a physical type of defenseman. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to be costly, but I could see Edmonton being interested in those forwards, but they're going to have to give up somebody like Darnell Nurse to get them. And if Flamester in the chat says Nurse wants $7.5 million. That's a tactic to get out of Edmonton. This is the same thing we heard about Trouba wanting big money out of Winnipeg, and that was his way of forcing his way out.
Yeah, but Holland's not going to do anything at the trade deadline with Nurse, or he has no playoffs.
No.
So, and I pray that the Leafs get Nurse so Donovan McNabb could start going to games in Toronto and start shedding some of that wisdom with the Toronto media. That would be fantastic. That will really help things.
Please.
Going back to Edmonton, though, with Mikko Koskinen, I mean, do we really, at this point, it's funny because a lot of people defend him. He's literally got a .910 save percentage. That is probably just below NHL average or barely NHL average.
They started playing Mike Smith more over the last 3 or 4 weeks, which is a statement on how average Koskinen is. I mean, if I was the management of the Oilers, I'd be looking for a goaltender, but I think they're sort of stuck in their.
They can't do anything.
Right. So, they would have to trade money elsewhere to open up space to get a goaltender, and nobody is taking. Somebody might take Mike Smith if they needed a veteran rental backup type of situation, but they need that more than those other teams. And
Koskinen got a .901 this year.
Yeah. But he's played apparently. Well, his save percentage was like in the 870s or November, so he's played better of late.
Okay, so,
but he's not the answer. He's not.
No. So my basic point is, Ken Holland is not going to give up any major assets to try and move further in the playoffs when he barely has the goaltending to get past the first round anyhow.
And he doesn't have the cap space to get rentals.
Right. And
he doesn't want to give up draft picks to get rentals.
So he is going to do a very minor move. And will probably trade for someone that would have gotten waived anyhow for like a 6th or a 7th round pick and hope that guy adds some scoring. Like, that's something I think they'll do. I don't think they're going to do anything bigger than that.
Esmir asks, would Kapanen for Nurse make sense for Toronto instead of Nylander?
Any of them make sense, but why would they take Nylander and that salary? They can't afford it.
No, they can't. They can't, because Nurse is making in the 3s and Nylander's making almost 7. I mean, right. Nylander could get traded in the summer depending on what happens this year. Remember, he's having a career year right now. He's going to score 30 goals. He could probably score 70 points. If they miss the playoffs, he's at his highest value, and they know where they need to improve. So it could be Kapanen, it could be Janssen, it could be Kerfoot, it could be Nylander. It all depends on what you're trading him for. I don't think Dubas is in trouble. I think Dubas has got at least 2 years in Toronto before he's in trouble. If they miss the playoffs this year, I think he still has at least 2 years. Okay, the other team in the Pacific is the Vancouver Canucks. They're leading the division by 1 point, 58. They're talking extension with Markstrom, so they'll have that tandem of Markstrom and Demko. I don't think goaltending is their problem. I think defensively, defensively is their issue. Excuse me, but I think it's more because of lack of his experience. I mean, Quinn Hughes is a very, very good offensive player. He's probably got to mature a little bit defensively. They've got veteran guys like Edler and Tanev. They have enough offense.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they add anything, it would be probably some sort of depth defenseman, but.
I could see a depth defenseman. They would have to add something to the blue line. They're playing over what we thought they could. We knew there would be a close team. None of us really thought they would stink.
No,
and so now they're playing above what we thought, and probably right where Vancouver hoped. Like, this is the hope for them, and I think they have to concentrate on defense. I think they do have enough offense. I think it's going to come down to goaltending and defense down the stretch for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what their schedule is like, so it's really hard to predict what they're going to do without looking at their complete schedule, but they have a shot.
Randy in the chat says Trey Macon, the big Russian defenseman, coming back from the KHL for the playoffs.
Okay, but understand that if Tremankin does that, he has never played with these guys.
Right.
Quinn Hughes is still young. Like, there could be a gelling problem there. Like,
he has played in the NHL, so he's used
right, but he hasn't played with these guys.
Right.
So you're going to have to put Tremankin on the third pairing and see what you have there, because he's not going to have much time to practice with these guys.
Right.
I guess the KHL season ends like a month before the playoffs.
Well, it depends.
It depends on the team.
It depends on the team. I think their playoffs start mid to late March. They could get eliminated in the first round. I don't know what team he's playing for, but Randy also says in the chat that Benning wants to add another winger, but he has to dump salary first. Well, I know that Ferland is on LTIR. I don't know whether he's coming back.
Really? That signing's not working out? I'm shocked.
Jeez.
I mean, come on.
I know. The other three teams in the Pacific are all sellers. It's just a question of how much. San Jose, I'm assuming the Melker Carlson and Brendan Dillon will be traded by the deadline.
Yeah,
maybe Aaron Dell. I don't know. Now this is the question: will they shop, or will they give their no trade waiver? Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau. They're not going to be back next year based on what's going on right now. This is a team that's probably going to do some changes.
They're not moving them. They're just going to ride it out.
Right. So
look, and Dell, they wouldn't even trade it for your crappy Dell laptop. Nobody wants them.
I don't see. The thing is, I don't even know.
Looking to see if your computer crashed. Pay attention to the show.
I keep checking just to see see if it I don't know if Patrick Marleau would, and he's a $700,000 cap hit. I don't think he would accept a trade anywhere, maybe even including Toronto, because Toronto had to, do some finagling to dump his salary.
Yeah, he's been there, done that. I think he's just going to ride it out. I think these guys are going to just, hit the last wave together, and that's it.
Yeah. The
way this season is, after you hit that last wave, it's going to probably pull them under for a few seconds.
I'm not gonna make a joke about the guy from Loverboy. Anaheim. The funny thing is, Anaheim does not have many unrestricted free agents. There's been a lot of talk about Josh Manson, and in terms of Nicholas Delorier, Derek Grant, Corbinian Holzer, Mike Delzato, Ryan Miller's been the guy who's been mentioned.
Well, Delzato, someone will take.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Carlo Koliakovo has talked on TSN radio in Toronto about the Leafs going after Delzato. Delzato
It is possible. I think that is possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's $750,000 defenseman. I mean, that is about what they can afford right now. So
but you're going to have to give up a halfway decent player or a decent draft pick. Now, and you're not going to like that, Mike, because that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right. Now, the team.
This is going to be like the defensive version of the Plekanec trade. That's what's going to happen.
I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it this year.
I don't think they were going to do Plekanec either. But
I didn't understand how stupid Lou Lamoriello was. He just wanted to keep Mike Babcock shut, his mouth shut. I mean, that's the sole motivation. It's like your coach just keeps pining away for, I need another center. I need another center. No, you don't. Your team's not good enough. And then say that's the thing here, Russ. I think Dubas realizes right now the way this team is right now, they're not good enough to make a run in the playoffs. If they show in the next month that they're good enough, then they might do something where they add somebody. But I don't think they're going to do it now.
Okay, but everything sounds right with what you're saying until Monday after the All-Star game, Brendan Shanahan knocks on the door of Kyle Dubas and says, "We need to make the playoffs. I was just in a meeting. Do what you have to do."
Well, they've already, next year they already have traded their first and their third. So I don't think they're trading a second next year. Maybe
they could trade. They could trade a second from even from 2 years and give them like a fifth this year. They're going to have to do something.
Flyer fan in the chat says, Mike, Leafs aren't in the West. They're like, I know it just drifted there. Sorry, Flyer fan. Okay, LA is going to be extremely busy. Toffoli, Trevor Lewis, Kyle Clifford. I don't know about Ben Hutton, but I think
nobody's going to want Ben Hutton.
Yeah, I think those three, especially Clifford and Toffoli. Toffoli because he's more of a scorer. Clifford because he's a physical guy. I think he can come in and be a bottom six guy and help a team out. Alec Martinez, if he is back healthy, maybe he'll be attractive to some teams out there because he has a year left in his contract. But they're definitely sellers, and Rob Blake is.
Well, remember, Trevor Lewis is a good name here because he doesn't make a ton. He has had big goals in the playoffs. He's won a Stanley Cup. So actually, was he on both Stanley Cup winners?
I believe so.
Yeah, so he's won it twice, and that's the kind of guy teams like to pick up when they think they're one guy away.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be desirable, and he probably won't get traded till the last minute because it'll be some team that finally gets around to LA and says, all right, look, with everything we've done, we want Lewis too.
Right.
And that's what the Kings hope for, because then you can get Lewis for, maybe a second-round pick.
Now, I know that there were rumors. Again, I'm sorry, folks. I'm just going to say.
Here we go.
There were rumors in the offseason during the summer that the Leafs were interested in signing Ben Hutton. Ben Hutton's not a great defenseman, but with them being shorthanded right now, he's making 1.5. If LA retains salary, I think the Leafs probably would be interested in a guy like him. So, all right, moving to the Central. Okay, we've got St. Louis at 68 points, Colorado trailing them by 6, Dallas in third place. St. Louis has the advantage of cap space because of Tarasenko being on LTIR.
Right. But is he coming back?
Well, they might pull a Patrick Kane. I haven't heard anything. The diagnosis was 5 to 6 months, and I think his injury was in early October. So that's around playoff time. Maybe he gets back for the first round, but they may hold him out because they can add something, hold him out until the end of the regular season, and they can use the cap space, which I think was $7.5 million. So that's a tricky move, but I think they will do it because they see a pathway to winning another Stanley Cup. They've already added a defenseman earlier in the year by adding Justin Falk.
Brilliant trade, maybe one of the best in the offseason.
Yeah, no, what I think is they're going to go after a forward, and it's a question of whether this is going to be somebody who's a pure rental or is this somebody who has term left on his contract. A guy like Kyle Palmieri or.
And I know what you're thinking, Flyers fans, because it's Berube. They're not trading for Jake Voracek. They're not.
No, but I think it's going to be a player that sort of fits with the way that the Blues play. They're a physical team. Maybe could they use a speed guy? Sure. I mean, because they haven't. I think during the regular season, even though they've had success, they're not the fastest team in the world. If they could add somebody who's got lights out speed, then they could do that. It's a question of who. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've heard a number of names, but it's everything from Mike Hoffman, who I don't think Florida is going to trade, but a scorer like that they might be interested in. But I do think that Doug Armstrong's going to add a winger or a forward before the deadline.
Yeah, I do. I think you're right on that.
Colorado, I think, is in the same, but Colorado has no limits whatsoever. They have tons of cap space. They have tons of prospects. If Kreider goes someplace, it might be Colorado because Colorado could offer the most.
Yeah.
But, JG Paj, I heard JG Pageau, Vatanen. I mean, I think their defense is pretty decent, but if they can add a Vatanen before the deadline, that makes sense. If they can add a Kreider.
Just to show you how much Kreider is really not going to get talked about in the deadline until the last minute. So at the All-Star game, he's there for the Rangers, and he said, look, it's an honor to be here as a New York Ranger.
Right.
And I told you how much he likes Gorton, how much he likes playing there. He said he is still hoping it gets worked out. Mm-hmm. There is still a percentage chance that it does get worked out and nothing happens because they do have cap space.
Right.
So that could happen. Now, if their desire is to go into the offseason, then yes, then he'll get traded, but it won't be till the last minute. And then based on the way he speaks, and I told you that I think he could be the next team captain, mm-hmm. I think he'll come rebounding back. I really do. But I'm going to tell you, there's probably only a 30% chance he gets traded because they're probably negotiating with him right now, probably at the All-Star game. That's probably when they're talking to him.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's possible. And if they want to roll the dice, if they think that they can get Kreider back by offering him the deal that they're offering him right now, or maybe a little more. And
then they'll not worry about what assets he could bring and then getting them back. They'll just make the deal.
Right. Exactly. Dallas, I think their defense is solid. They have a really good goaltending tandem in Bishop and Khudobin. Strangely, even though they've added, even though they have Sagan and Ben, they have Rupe Hintz, they added Pavelski. If they do make a trade, it might be for offense. But I don't know. This might be a team that, with the upheaval of the coaching, maybe they just stand pat. I don't know if there's a big motivation there to make a move.
I don't think there's big motivation to make a big move. They could do something slight. It's possible that maybe they get a suitor for Honka and that gets them somebody. That is possible.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they try and do.
Same thing with Edmonton for Puljujärvi.
But this is going to have – I mean, no offense to Rick Bowness, but every player is going to have to really play the best hockey they've ever played for Dallas to really advance. I don't know what Rick Bowness is really going to add to them. Right. So – and I think that's fair to say. I'm not the only one that feels that way. So I think it's really like, if you got Sagan playing exactly right and Pavelski raises his game like he usually does in the playoffs and Bishop is lights out, then yes, they can go far. But if they're just a little bit off their game, I don't think Bowness is working any magic. So I would think Honka is their trade bait to get something.
Yeah, especially being a defenseman of under the age of 25 who played in the NHL before, who's got ability. Obviously he's not going to play the rest of the year here because he didn't sign. But just like Puljujärvi, if there's a team out there that he's starting to score again in the SM Liga, if they think that these guys can be ads for them next year, it's like a draft pick. It's a future asset. Although these guys can play in the NHL. So
I'll give you an example. Let's say at the deadline, I don't know, the Flyers lost 8 of 10, and now they're not feeling great about the playoffs. Anything's possible, right? They can make it, they can not make it. Mm-hmm. Then you might see someone like Scott Lawton get traded, or someone, if they would accept a Pitlick for a Honka, because then they'd be like, all right, look, we can get a guy, we throw him in our third or fourth line, we're ready for battle. Like, that's the kind of guys, those kinds of guys are what they're looking for.
The rest of the teams in the Central, I'm not to fast forward through them, but Winnipeg is just tied up with this Bufflin situation. I don't know if it gets clarified before the deadline.
Doesn't seem like it.
Doesn't seem like it's going to, and if it isn't, that the
I mean, what is the situation? I mean, I don't even know anymore.
Well, right. I mean, well, it's a question of whether he comes back. See, the thing is, if he comes back,
I'm going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Let's play to tell the truth or whatever. Let's go. Where is Waldo? Where is he right now?
White fishing in Minnesota?
I'm saying, like,
no.
How is he magically going to either play or retire?
Well, we've heard rumors about him, like, being like as big as Keith Kachuk after the lockout and things of that nature. But the point is that they can't spend the cap space on the chance that he comes back, because then what are they going to do? I'm ready to play now. Okay, well, great, but we've already spent your cap space acquiring so and so from such team. It's like, okay, they can't do it, so they're sort of stuck waiting.
I can't imagine they're doing much, if anything at all.
Yeah, Chicago, I think, will do something. Remember, the funny thing was 3-4 weeks ago, I'm saying, or whenever the announcement of DeHaan and Seabrook being out for the year happened, I said they could use that $11 million to take on salary from other teams and get assets. Now they're at 54 points. They're 3 points behind the wild card, 4 points behind third place in their own division. Stan Bowman's going to add. He's going to add.
Yeah, he's probably going to add, because that will at least keep the fans engaged. But
I wouldn't be surprised, based on the fact that we know Stan Bowman likes players that he knows. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sabres sell, and they would probably sell Michael Frolik, who they just got from Calgary. Frolik played on Cup winners in Chicago and is an expiring contract. I wouldn't doubt that Frolik could go to Chicago. That's like one possibility.
Yeah, I mean,
does he help a lot? No, I don't know.
No, I mean, they need defensive help. I mean, again, if you want to laugh off the situation with Jonathan Toews being on top of Duncan Keith at practice and Culloden saying, "Well, you ever have a brother?" Well, it's like that. Jeremy, I'm not buying it. I think Jonathan Toews basically probably tried to light a fire under Duncan Keith, because he had to elevate his game the last 2 years and finally got it in gear this year. Keith has not.
Right.
Maybe he can't. But the idea is, I think he's challenging him to do that. I don't think this is any brotherly spat. I really don't. I think this is about Toews wanting to make the playoffs, seeing what is holding this team back, and it's pretty obvious.
Now, Minnesota, they've stayed closer than I thought after that really bad start.
They really have.
They're 2 points behind the Hawks, so that means 5 points out of the wild card and 6 points out of third place in the Central. The problem is that it just seems that the rumors out there of them about them is trading Dumba, trading this guy.
Dumba's not getting traded this season.
Yeah, I think if Dumba is traded, and remember, he's not a rental. He's $6 million for, I think, another 4 years, which is a pretty good contract, or 3 years, which is a pretty good contract for a pretty good defenseman.
Right.
I don't think that's a deal that happens at the deadline. That's more of a draft or summer deal. But they don't have many expiring contracts.
Wait, I'll tell you the guy. If there's somebody you could trade, it's probably Brodin. He's got 1 more year after this at 4.1.
Right.
That is your trade bait, and you probably could get a forward that has similar term.
Yep. I think
that's like NHL median, right? That's the price that you could get somebody at.
That's the same cap hit as Adam Larson. The same cap hit. Yeah. There's that type of, I believe the same cap hit as a guy like Tanev. So a defensive defenseman.
They're in a good spot. There's no expectations. If they stay close and he makes a deal like this, he's helping the cap, but he's also showing the fans, look, I'm at least trying here. The one thing I noticed about them, and I've watched a fair amount of games, is since Devin Dubnyk has come back from the issue with his wife, he's played better.
Yep.
It seems like the team has rallied behind that. Eric Staal, I mean, if you want to talk about the best contract in hockey, once again, it's Eric Staal. He's the first ballot Hall of Famer. this guy, you can't kill Eric Stahl.
What does Nashville do? Because
Nashville is hoping first that Pecorini catches fire, right? Like that's the hope.
I mean, they're six points out of a wild card, 7 points behind Dallas, and it's January 24th. You're getting to the point where unless you have this massive hot streak in the weeks leading up to the deadline, I mean, they're not going to be sellers because they really don't have
trade the centers. They really can't.
Right. I mean, they're not going to trade.
I'll give you the guy they could trade, but again, and they probably will do it either way because I think he's a UFA. Is Granlund?
Granlund, yeah.
So he is their trade bait. So Granlund, and Granlund makes probably around 4, right? So he's one of those
5.75.
5.7. Yeah, it's a little high. So they might have to eat a little, but they could trade Granlund, and I think they will no matter what. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that catches them up in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, they might trade him to open up cap space to buy somebody else because I just don't know whether Poyle can resist the possibility of just going for it with the team that he has and stay.
He may not have a choice because by the time in another month and a half they could be 8 points out.
Yeah. Okay, so we got 15 minutes left. So we gave the West the 45.
Not on the clock or anything, people, but if Mike says so.
Well, no, we like to do an hour. But we'll take some questions here, but we'll just touch on a few teams. We talked about these teams enough, so I'm just going to say Detroit is going to sell everything. Everything.
Yeah, Detroit is selling everything that's not nailed down.
Daly, Green. Nobody wants Jonathan Erickson, so don't even bother about that. But Daly and Green, if they're healthy, they'll move them. Jimmy Howard, I think, could get moved. And the thing is, it could also be some of the RFAs if they don't want to keep them or don't think that they want to keep them, like Athanasiou. If they don't see a future keeping Athanasiou, even though he's a good player,
I could see them keeping Athanasiou and maybe trading Michael Rasmussen because they haven't gotten what they'd hoped to get out of him, and he's still a name and he's a big body, and somebody would still want him. They might dangle him in a trade.
Yeah. New Jersey, they've already traded Hall. I believe they're going to trade Vatanen. That's if they can get him signed on a long-term deal, fine. But
X said Palmieri. If they trade Palmieri, there is nothing they can do next year to become a playoff team. Now that is a full. We're going to have to wait another 3 years, kind of deal for the Devils.
Well, I mean, Zajac's name has been out there.
That's what I mean. Once you start going 2 or 3 of those, there's not much left.
Yeah, I mean, Zajac's name has been out there. Miles Wood's name has been out there. Coleman's name has been out there. Coleman, you could get a lot for Coleman. He's 1.8 against the cap with another year left, and then he's a UFA. He's a pain in the ass to play against. And I don't think there are many people who want somebody drinking pickle juice in their locker room. But yeah, no, I mean, you're right about Palmieri. He's got another year left. And if they trade him and they trade Zajac, I mean, Wayne Simmons says he wants to stay there, probably because he
might have to stay. They won't have anybody.
Right, exactly. They need some veterans to be there. Could they trade a Pavel Zacha because they just don't think he hasn't panned out?
I don't think that would be an in-season trade. I think that might be a draft thing if they determine that. I think they'll give him the rest of the season because probably Fitzgerald needs to see where they're at.
And Ottawa
and Brodeur. Don't want to forget Brodeur.
Yeah, and Ottawa. What Ottawa did last year, I saw Pierre LeBrun have a Q&A with Pierre Dorian, and the way he answered the question. They're doing the same thing they did last year.
I mean, is there even a question about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody wants Michael Bodker. Nemestikov, Tyler Ennis, Hainsey, Borowiecki, Craig Anderson. If they can get
3 guys that have some value.
Yeah, if they can get anything of value for them, they're dealing them.
Right. But, again, who's playing next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, but see, what they did was what they did this year is they added 1-year guys.
I know.
They signed Haynes. They overpaid Hainsey $3.5 million for 1 year. They gave Tyler Ennis a guaranteed 1 year deal for $800,000. They'll just do that again. They'll just bring in veterans who want to stay in the league, who will take a little extra because they have tons of cap space. That's what they're going to do. They're going
to. They literally are rotating deck chairs on the Titanic. They are.
But I think next year, what you're going to see is more of the kids. You're going to see Batherson. You're going to see. Colin White's there. You're going to Logan Brown. You're going to see all the players,
and more losses will pile up too.
Right, but
who's in net next year?
What's that?
Who will be starting in goal next year?
Probably Anders Nielsen. Yeah, probably Anders Nielsen. Mark Peterson says Ho-Sang to Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean it's possible, but again, it's also possible Lou does nothing with Ho-Sang and just lets him twist in the wind.
Lets him rot, yeah. Now, I don't think the Rangers are – I don't think they're full sellers right now.
Well, I want to – let me preface this.
Go ahead.
So recently we found out that in a closed-door meeting before the season began, there was an edict for the Knicks, sort of like a demand to make the playoffs. They are 100% out of it already, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think the Rangers are going to admit that they're sellers until the last minute. I don't think John Davidson will do that until the very last minute. They're going to have to look at it and say, all right, it's just about mathematically impossible. Let's do this because of what happened with the Knicks. Because say what you want, Dolan has plenty of money. It costs them money, though, when the Garden is dark for all those playoff games because they didn't book any concerts. You know what I mean? That it does cost them a lot of money. So I don't think they're going to make any quick decisions on this.
Yeah, maybe the fact that Genesis was at the recent Nick game is a
okay. So let's talk about that now that you brought that up because I messaged you about that. So the members of Genesis were there for whatever reason. Phil was not sitting with Rutherford and
I'm not worried about that. They get along. They're very good friends.
I know, but he wasn't sitting with them.
No.
Now, there's two schools of thought on this. The first school of thought is, well, Phil Collins' birthday I think it's his 70th, is at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And so maybe they're all just hooping it up. They're going to go to McSorley's and have a beer. But I don't really believe now they could have been there to see LeBron James because they were playing the Lakers, I think. Maybe. But I still think that's a long shot. So what I think is happening is the same way Dolan brought in Billy Joel for an engagement and the same way he brought in who did he bring in at the Beacon? Seinfeld.
I know he brought the Eagles in
for a little while and Seinfeld, remember?
Yeah, he brought the Eagles in, and his clause in the contract was my band has got to open up for the Eagles.
Right. So my feeling is maybe he's got a list of engagements either at MSG or at the Beacon for them because Dolan owns both buildings. Either like once a month if Genesis decides to tour, or maybe 10 days in a row or something crazy like that. And I think that's probably what was being discussed.
Yeah, Phil's got to pay for his next divorce.
It wasn't the Knicks, that's for sure.
Yeah. No. Okay, just touch on a couple more things, and then we'll end the show. I think Montreal are sellers. I think that there's been enough chatter out there. I mean, the stupidest thing would be to sign Kovalchuk and now fall in love with him and keep him.
That would be a dumb thing to do. I think they will end up selling him at the last minute if they feel like they're not making it.
Now, the name of Petrie has been out there.
They're not selling
He's got another year.
Yeah, they're not selling him.
And here's the reality, folks. And I'm not saying this because I'm anti-Montreal. I'm sure Eck would say that I was.
I wish you could put a warning and have it blazing in red while you're speaking. But go ahead.
Mike is not anti-Montreal. No, Montreal can't get players to sign there.
They're having trouble.
Petrie's got another year. Will they trade him as a rental if they can't get him extended? I mean, I think he's 31 or 32 years old.
I think they'll end up extending him.
They might extend him, but, if they can't, then they'll trade him next year when he's an expiring contract.
We got Mike Komisarek money. That hurts you, and that hurts Toronto and the Canadians.
But the point the point is that while he's got term left on that contract, they're not trading him unless they get somebody else who has term on their contract.
They can't afford to.
But anybody who's not nailed down, again, guys like Kovalchuk, who's a $700,000 rental, they'll get a second. They could get a second round pick for him. Nate Thompson, Marco Scandella, who they just traded for, they could end up flipping him.
They could flip him.
Buffalo, the same thing. I think let's just say this. Here's the caveat. Buffalo, starting next week, has 9 of their next 10 games at KeyBank Center. If after that group of games ends on February 16th, if after that's 8 days before the deadline, they are not closer than they are right now, which is 10 points behind third place and 10 points behind.
They're selling.
I think they're selling now, but they can't say that because all this, the fan base is pissed off enough at the Sabres with them not having.
I think their fans are smart enough to look at the situation and say it doesn't look great, and
they have pieces to sell. I'm telling you right now, I would be shocked if they are sellers and Connor Sheary doesn't go back to Pittsburgh.
I mean, he could go somewhere else. Maybe he goes to Calgary,
Right, but with Pittsburgh, with Gensel off for the rest of the year and them having cap space because he's on LTIR, and Sheary was traded from Pittsburgh to Buffalo because they couldn't afford him, and he's at an expiring contract, that fits. Frolik is a UFA. Gergensons, who's having a better year than he's had the last few, he's a UFA at $1.6 million. Johan Larsson, and then the ever-injured Zach Bogosian. So, I think that there's 5 or 6 pieces there that they could sell and get something for, because probably none of them are coming back.
No, none of them are coming back.
So, all right.
It's over, Johnny. Hold on.
Oh.
There's a team here that you left out.
Well, no, I know I'm leaving out teams because, but go ahead.
Why? Well, because what?
No, I don't want to go over an hour.
Are we taking questions?
Oh, I haven't seen any.
Wow, you want to end early.
If there are questions in the chat, give us. Are
they having a $1 Big Mac sale? Like, why are you in a rush?
No, and I wouldn't eat those because they give me heartburn.
Okay.
Nylander going to Mark Peterson says Nylander going to Carolina for Nino Niederreiter. I think they'll get a lot more than Alex Nylander.
Well, if that were the trade, that would be an awful trade for the Leafs.
No, Alex Nylander.
Oh, Alex Nylander.
He didn't say William. He just said Nylander. So I'm assuming he means Alex because
I don't think they're going to trade him.
Why would the Leafs trade for another forward? They need defense.
Right.
So what was it you wanted to finish off the show with, or?
No, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, and Funky says Mike is going to the Anchor Bar. Not unless I want to get murdered. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.